we've got time for one or two questions. So if you could keep your questions really short, we'll do one in the hall and one online.
Okay.
That's okay for you.
Sorry, that's
maybe
my fault.
hall first. There's one right there. Yeah, at the back. The microphone is coming.
Thank you for incredibly inspiring and fascinating lecture. The plankton, which emit the aerosols, which you talked about, which form nuclei for clouds to condense around, given that that can have a cooling effect in the way you described, is that a possible solution or one part of a solution to global warming, to encourage larger population of plankton in the oceans?
No. And it's partly because it would be so much harder than just, not emitting any more stuff. But it's mostly because they're very distributed and diffuse, and as you could see in that plot about life, their numbers are already going down because of climate change. So first of all, if we do want to help them, we can stop making climate change worse. Like, the sort of the solution is built into the problem. But also manipulating life on that scale is incredibly intrusive in ecosystems. It's energy intensive. It would be really, really, really hard to do. People have suggested doing what's called solar radiation management, which is sort of a kind of weird euphemism, really. But anyway, it means spraying aerosols into the high atmosphere, which may reflect stuff back to space. It's basically experiments being done to see whether it works. We may need it. It's legally an absolute minefield, and it's very difficult to. If once you do it, you have to keep doing it. So that idea of injecting aerosols artificially, not with microbes, is absolutely a thing of last resort. It is never, ever, ever going to be the best or the easiest solution. If it's that or extinction of everything, you might go down that route. But it's not because you have to keep doing it and because it's a legal minefield, effectively, it's not going to happen within the next 30 years. It will be much, 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 much easier just to electrify our world and move to renewables. So much easier, and then we don't need to mess with the ocean and cause all kinds of other unintended consequences. So, no, sorry.
Okay, one from online. In the data insufficient group, which animal would you like to know more about and have or collect more data?
Oh, see,
I know where to start, right?
I don't know exactly what's on the list of what they haven't measured. So I haven't got an answer to that because it's not that they're not trying, this is incredibly time intensive, you have to be careful, you have to do really robust, solid science, and they are measuring global populations of animals, so it is quite a hard thing to do. It's not really their fault, but what I would like is for someone to give them the funding to actually do a really good job of that, because then I don't want to finish the lecture on a depressing point, but I think the really important point here is that knowledge is power. Right? And if we know about things, even if just hearing this makes you slightly depressed, it also makes you think about the world differently. And that will shift behavior. And so the knowledge that we have about these systems is our most powerful tool in terms of actually doing anything about it, because you cannot do everything without the knowledge. The next thing is you have to care. But that is a solvable problem, and most people do care about the environment. Even in Donald Trump's America, most people care about nature and the environment, the majority, by a long way. So I think it's, we can always measure more, but we have enough knowledge to take action on a lot of these things now. But we should still keep collecting data, because that's our superpower.
I think one of the other question was in a similar vein. So is there a more reliable way of charting how species are doing? Because you pointed out that you change wording and suddenly it looks great, but it isn't as positive as we might think.
So there are a few methods. There are a few indirect methods. So, for example, using underwater acoustics to monitor populations, you have to be really careful about how you do it, because an animal might be quiet just because it's having a quiet day, or because it isn't there, and you've got to know enough to tell the difference. But there are indirect methods and it's much easier to collect acoustics than to take loads of photographs, for example. Much easier just to listen. So there are indirect methods, we're getting better at those. possibly the most powerful tool is genetics and environmental DNA. Now, environmental DNA, what that means is you kind of take an environment, you mush up all of its DNA, you mix it all together, and then you find out what you've got. What were the things that were in there? So it doesn't necessarily tell you how much of anything there was, but it does have an enormous amount of information about diversity. And it's possible that better ways of doing that might start to give us some big scale sort of information on where things are and how they are. But that's really the only way of doing it as a whole system thing. So maybe the geneticists are very clever and they'll work out ways to use environmental DNA with other information about the environment to say something about populations. But it's clear that doing it one by one is very slow. And of course, there are machine learning methods now, but they rely on having good data to start with. So they're not a solution by themselves unless you already have some measurement in the environment that might tell you something useful. But so it's not, there are potentially ways to do this, we just have to choose to do it.
I can't believe the next lecture is the last in the first series, your series, which is going to be about ice in May. Let's hope it's not going to be,
Did we think about that before that was scheduled?
I'm not doing the thinking here, that's your job. But do you want to give us a sneaky peek?
Yeah, it's mysterious, isn't it? But in the same way that animals are doing things, the ice and the snow are doing things. And I think it's a really interesting perspective on our planet. So that's what's going to happen in May. Yes.
Thanks very much, Helen. Thanks very much.
Thank you.